Welcome to Bake to the Future. The wholesale baking industry mixes tradition and innovation to feed the world and the economy, generating some major dough while employing nearly 800,000 people in the U.S. We bring you a fresh take on the latest trends and issues impacting the baking sector through exclusive insights and conversations. Brought to you by the American Bakers Association, who will take you Bake to the Future.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Haley Blumenreich.
And I'm Katie Jewell.
And today we are talking with retail technology innovation expert Gary Hawkins. Gary is the founder and CEO of CART, the Center for Advancing Retail and Technology. CART connects retail and new innovative capabilities through programs, events, and education. Gary and his team are at the forefront of helping retailers, wholesalers, brand manufacturers, and solution providers cultivate a culture of innovation and agility through workshops and leadership training. Gary helps guide the consumer goods retail industry into the future, making him the perfect guest for the show, since we are also future-focused. Welcome, Gary. Thanks for joining us.
Well, great to be with you today. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Gary, and we are too. Before we get started into the meat of the conversation for today, I have a few questions to start off. First is, where are you joining us from today?
So I am in Southern California in Marina del Rey, right outside Los Angeles.
And I think that you met Haley a few months back before the world turned upside down. Isn't that right, Haley?
Yes, we met at an event in New York City in February, and it was about the intersection of the food industry and technology, and Gary was on a panel there. And so who would have known, we would be talking about the food industry and technology, and then, the pandemic hit the U.S. and things have accelerated incredibly. So I'm really glad that we're getting a chance to talk with Gary on the podcast to get his take on how technology and food and the baking industry, how it's all interconnecting.
And have you found that, Gary, happening? I know that, this is kind of the air that you breathe, so to speak. What have you seen happen in the last several months since the pandemic took over?
Well, obviously we live in a very different world than we did 8 or 10 weeks ago, right? And certainly retail, and especially food retail, grocery retail, has changed dramatically. While it is one of the few retail sectors that remains open, as I'm sure everybody knows, grocery shopping today is a far different experience than it was. I think, a couple of the big call outs, and really the big one, as I think it relates to our conversation today, really focuses around how grocery shopping online, food shopping online has just exploded over the last 8 weeks or so. And there's a number of implications flowing from that we can get into. I think the other thing that I'm seeing more and more is an interest in nutrition and eating well as part of keeping your immune system strong, right, as we continue through this pandemic. So I think at a high level, those are two of the big things I've seen.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of topics that we are hoping to cover today in our short conversation. But maybe you could start us off by telling us, what you've been seeing in your work and kind of just about the future of retail and how baking companies who are ABA members can be adapting to the quickly changing retail landscape.
Absolutely. So let's start, because I think it's a place nearly everyone can relate to today, is shopping online. Before this crisis hit, probably on average across the country, only around maybe 2% or so of grocery sales were being done online. Since the crisis hit, 8 or so weeks ago, that has simply exploded. I've talked to many retailers that have seen their online shopping double, triple, quadruple, in some cases even go up tenfold. So massive increases. And I think there's a number of implications there flowing from that for your members, right? For companies working across the baking industry here. One of the things coming out of this move to online is a pressing need for retailers to fulfill orders far more efficiently. Today, nearly every retailer is fulfilling those orders by somebody in the store going up and down the aisle picking products. And while that may have worked early on, it does not work when you're doing, 5 or 10% of your total business now online, because online is simply not profitable through manual picking. So we're seeing just a exploding level of interest in technology and automation, with a large number of retailers focused very heavily on what is referred to as micro-fulfillment center technology. So these think of them as almost like an automated distribution center that can fit into 5,000 or 10,000 square feet. And, the products come in the back door, loaded up into bins that go into this automated fulfillment center, and then effectively robots picking individual products to fulfill an order. So where the implications come in that process are, think about packaging of baked goods, cookies, bread, other things, right? That package was designed for that product to sit on the shelf. That may not any longer be the best package design if that product now has to go in a tote for, pick up at the store parking lot or for delivery home or into a box to be shipped somewhere. So I think we're going to see a lot of manufacturers and absolutely across the baking industry here really reassess their packaging with a view to making it e-commerce friendly, if you will. I think the other piece of that is, again, today with these micro-fulfillment centers, what's happening is product comes in the back door. That case of product or however it's coming in has to be unpacked, individual items put into the appropriate place. I'm already seeing different brand manufacturers reassessing not only their packaging, but also how that product is actually being shipped in to make loading up these automated fulfillment centers that much more efficient. So a lot of stuff going on around that space.
That is a lot. And it's a lot to think about how, 3, 5, 10 years from now, what grocery shopping might look like based on what you were just talking about. And I'm wondering from, our members' perspective, as far as how to actually reach consumers if, the way what you just described to me really sound like a commodity, right? It's, bread in, cookies in, bread out, cookies out. Like it's in and out. And so kind of where could our members be thinking about how they can position themselves as the product of choice? And what are some things you think they could do to help make sure in that sort of environment that their product is the one that consumers choose?
So that's a great question. The first thing I want to call out is you just mentioned looking out 3, 5, 7, 9 years. My comment to that would be this is going to happen far, far faster than most people, I think, realize. I could share with you a number of retailers I've talked with this past week around this kind of technology. They're looking in terms of months to deploy this, not years. So this stuff's going to happen quickly. But back to your question, how can the brands bring that sort of in-store experience into the digital world, right? Where you don't have smells, you don't have aromas and things that you take advantage of in the actual traditional store. In the online space, and it's funny, I was just having a conversation around this with someone else earlier today. I think in the very near term, like immediately, I would encourage the brands to talk with their different retailers that have an online shopping experience and understand how the brand can present digital ads, relevant messaging on that screen when the shoppers are shopping, right? So, simple, easy example, right? Someone is just put hamburgers or hot dogs or whatever into their online basket. Is there a possibility of that brand being able to surface an ad or a message alongside that in real time? Hey, don't forget about rolls or other baked goods to go along with that, right? That capability is out there today, and I would encourage your members to look at that like immediately. What's coming quickly, though, will be both augmented reality and virtual reality shopping experiences. If there's one thing that I think this pandemic has really done, it has accelerated nearly everything that has been happening across retail over the last several years. It literally accelerated the growth of online shopping probably 5 years in the last 5 weeks. And similarly, we're going to see things like augmented reality and virtual reality coming into the market here very quickly. Now, those things open up some really fascinating opportunities for brands, right? So think of someone in a virtual reality grocery store, going up and down the aisles or looking around. The ability now to make that product, in a sense, almost come alive, right? So that package of bread or cookies or whatever it may be can all of a sudden be animated. There can be some information that appears above it. And again, we're in a virtual world here, right? Talking about the baking process, the all-natural ingredients, a recipe idea, all those types of things. And you can do similar things over in augmented reality. And again, I think if there's one overarching theme here I would want to share with your members. It's that all this change is going to happen far, far quicker than most people expect. So now is the time to be thinking about this stuff and learning about it and beginning to move in those directions.
I think what you're saying is interesting. And I'm kind of geeking out right now. I used to work in the mobile space. And so hearing AR and VR being a part of an actual, technology that we use to function, I think is incredibly exciting and interesting. And I think it also presents, if we're thinking in the future, this is going to happen. I think it presents a lot of interesting marketing opportunities and like gamification marketing type of thing where, brands could work to really create this like almost game experience in a grocery store. Kind of like, you remember that old show where people would race around the aisles looking for things? Kind of like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another place that the brands could look, today, again, partnering with their different retail customers. Nearly every retailer out there has an app today, and many of them are using location-based services. So think about, in the store bakery, they've just had a batch of fresh baked bread come out of the oven or cookies or whatever. Being able to message every shopper that's within a mile of that store, hey, we just had a batch of cookies or sourdough bread come out of the oven, that type of thing. So, it's really marketing in real time.
That's really cool. I think, something that we always talk about is the power of emotion when it comes to the bakery category. And so trying to use that in a digital way, I think is a unique challenge, but it could also be a strength if you can evoke those feelings and the emotional connection to the baked goods.
So, along with the emotional aspect of it, one of the things that we found in the studies that ABA has done is that people really want fresh. And so even being able to do something like that brings both emotion and that need for having a fresh product.
So absolutely. And again, many of these things can now happen in real time too. And I think what you just mentioned around fresh, I think ties together really, really well with this notion of comfort foods and people, as they're self-quarantining and locked down, I've spoken to a number of people that live around me that have young kids. For the really first time in a long time, they're cooking nearly every meal at home now, and mealtime has become an occasion. But they're looking for foods that evoke sort of childhood memories, that type thing. And man, what better than some fresh baked cookies or bread? Those aromas that you remember as a kid growing up.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting segue into what you mentioned earlier about the health and wellness around coronavirus. Could you touch on what you've been seeing in terms of health and wellness in the retail space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, health and wellness in food retailing has been an important thing for some time now. But what we're seeing is interest in health and wellness being taken to a whole new level, and much of it being driven by the COVID-19 crisis here. People, I think a lot of people, the first few weeks of quarantining, splurged on potato chips and all that great junk food they normally don't get to have. But I think now that we've all been in this for a while, everyone's getting a little more serious around, I better start paying attention to what I eat. So we're seeing a fast-growing interest in not only healthy eating, but more specifically in certain foods, certain diets, supplements, vitamins, that type of thing. Everything related to helping someone keep their immune system strong, right? When thinking about the coronavirus. And so I think there's any messaging that your members can develop around that, the role of baked goods in a healthy diet could be really powerful at this time.
So talking about health and wellness, I think that a lot of people we've had on the show, it does come down to that. And I think that that's an opportunity being presented to the industry, in addition to other opportunities that might be a little bit harder to see as we're looking into recovery and into that 6 month, 1 year, 3 year time frame. It's just a fundamental shift, I think, in a lot of ways. And Gary, when we talked before, we were talking about, kind of going back to retail, and maybe we can talk about retail and positioning baked good as health and wellness. I want to talk about how do you do that, and what new store formats might come out, and what are some of those new store formats that might be coming out of this?
So I think we are going to see a lot of impact here to store design. I think the easy way to think of this is what I think we're going to see develop here is what I think of as a hybrid store. So think about, if you walk into a typical store today, that store being almost divided in half. In the back half of the store, closed off from view, will be one of these micro-fulfillment centers. And as a shopper, you will have either, gone online through your phone or at home before you go to the store to order all the packaged stuff, Cheerios and cat food and diapers, paper towels, whatever, right? Or you do that literally on your way in the front door. Then the front half of the store is really all about fresh foods, right? From baked goods to fresh produce, meat, seafood, etc. So the experience is going to be a bit different, but people still like to pick out their own fresh foods. They still like the experience of shopping for fresh foods, right? Because it really is an experience, from the aromas and the smells coming from the bakery, all the visuals of fresh food that can be presented throughout that environment. That's in a sense, the exciting piece of food shopping. The more boring piece, the packaged stuff, you'll pick up on your way out after you've selected all your fresh foods and paid for them. So we're absolutely going to see an impact to store design here. The other piece of that is going to be eventually the whole checkout area going away, because what's coming is Amazon Go type technology where cameras and sensors through the store understand all the different products you've picked up and what to charge you for as you walk out the door. So that cashier, that checkout counter, that whole space of the store is eventually going to go away.
And I guess that these things were already in motion, but I guess the coronavirus is kind of what has propelled this. Do you think that this will propel the innovation to come even faster?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the crisis that we are still in the middle of here has accelerated nearly everything across retail. All these different technologies have been sort of bubbling away, in the background, but the crisis has accelerated a lot of this, and you're going to see these things coming into more and more store formats pretty quickly.
And do you think that another thing that's happening quickly is some of the thought that some of the messaging around like safety of food is in question? And are there ways that our members could help assuage any fears that consumers might have?
Yeah, so that's a great call out. I'm sure, again, as many people have seen, if they've gone into a grocery store in the last several weeks, the salad bars, all those open fresh food bars, prepared foods, and so on have gone away as retailers have shut them down. So the implication there is that food that were formerly sold as loose or in bulk are now needing to be packaged. So a big call out there.
And do you think that the messaging on the maybe on the packaging too, would need to say that this has been baked and delivered in a safe and clean environment? I know I've seen some food delivery companies saying like once it leaves our oven, it's never touched by a human hand or whatever. Like, do you think that consumers would be looking for that sort of confidence boost?
Yes, I think that would be a great thing to be able to communicate. You're seeing different, for example, you see pizza ads on TV at night talking about that. But any kind of messaging around safety, giving the shopper confidence that they can buy that product, I think is really important right now.
And I think that that's interesting because ABA has been around for nearly 125 years. And the reason that our association started in the first place was because consumers were concerned about the move of baked goods moving from like something that you would make in your home on a small scale or go to like your local corner bakery to then moving to like a wholesale style format. And consumers were afraid that the large factory, the large plants making baked goods wouldn't be safe or clean. And so that was actually one of the main reasons that ABA started in the first place. And I've looked at old baking ads and old bread ads that actually show like, hey, come and look at our plant, see how sparkling clean it is. And so I just think it's interesting because it's something that was relevant 125 years ago. And I think that people have just really taken for granted that our food supply system and the regulations we have in place always make sure that our products and our food is safe and clean. And there's so many things in place to help ensure that. But I think that it's interesting that we're now, might want to consider messaging around that again.
Yeah, so I think that's a great call out. And, just thinking here back to earlier part of our conversation, imagine one of the manufacturers creating a short video or something showing the production facility, how the cleaning is done, the cleanliness of it, et cetera, that can be posted online, maybe on the retailer's online shopping site, or even on, a digital signage inside the store to convey that message, as you're saying. I think that'd be really powerful.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us as we wrap up this conversation? Any ideas for the future? This whole conversation is about the future, but any last thoughts?
No, I think the closing thought I would leave with everyone, as I've mentioned earlier, was that, change is happening increasingly fast. The crisis that we are continuing to go through has accelerated a lot of change across the food industry, and that change is going to continue to happen faster and faster. So I think that, things that people may have thought were going to be some years off may now happen in months. So I would encourage everyone to really be aggressive in looking at new ways to communicate with shoppers, new ways to work with your retailers around marketing, messaging, all these types of things.
Sounds like a startup. It's so interesting. Just how nimble I think everybody's going to need to be here. And not that they haven't been nimble in the past, but I think, like you said, the speed at which things are changing is the gas has been pressed, and I think we're just going full steam ahead. So thank you so much, Gary, for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation.
And for our listeners, want to let you know that if you enjoyed this podcast, we have many other episodes on the baking industry and coronavirus. You can go to baketothefuture.org to find more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe to Bake to the Future wherever you listen to podcasts.
Bake to the Future is brought to you by the American Bakers Association in partnership with Human Factor. To hear upcoming and past episodes, go to baketothefuture.org. Bake to the Future is produced by Haley Blumenreich. Audio engineer is Blake Alton. And A Slice of the Action is written by the American Bakers Association's Government Relations team.